10 years ago, the gaming world was mere days away from seeing the next console generation officially begin. And while many were excited for the possibilities presented by the PlayStation 4, many others anxiously awaited the already infamous Xbox One. With the reveal mired by Microsoft's underhanded attacks on both personal ownership and long-term preservation, the console was fighting an uphill battle long before launch day, and while many of the most egregious issues with the console were rectified shortly after its initial announcement, Microsoft's big black brick still suffered major scrutiny for its lackluster lineup.
It's revolutionary!
That said, while the launch day exclusives mostly consisted of shovelware and flimsy justifications for the compulsory Kinect, a few titles threatened to make the Xbone worth buying, and one of those potential diamonds in the rough was Forza Motorsport 5. After Forza Motorsport 3 laid the foundation for the franchise's future, and Forza Motorsport 4 built beyond that base, the stage was set for Forza Motorsport 5 to transcend the limitations of outdated hardware, harness the power of Microsoft's next-gen machine, and supersede its predecessors as the greatest racing game ever made. At least, that's what players expected to happen. Beautiful as it may have been, Forza 5 represented the biggest disappointment in series history, failing to deliver long-anticipated features while stripping away massive quantities of content only to sell some of it back through microtransactions. Fortunately, with Forza Motorsport 6 rectifying many of these issues and a new version of the Xbox One on the horizon, Turn 10 had another opportunity to deliver a launch title that would not only live up to the legacy of earlier entries, but quite possibly become the greatest Forza Motorsport ever made. It would have been nice if that's what happened. To cut to the chase, Forza Motorsport 7 is simultaneously a good and a bad game. Like Forza 5 before it, Forza 7 was the result of a game rushed to completion for a console's launch lineup, resulting in many of the same maladies as its predecessors. That said, it also benefits from the foundation laid by its 8th-gen ancestors, especially when it comes to content. With over 700 cars available on disc, Forza 7 has by far the largest roster of any installment in the series. Even after accounting for all the bonus content in earlier entries, no other game in the franchise matches the sheer volume of vehicles in the standard version of Forza 7. Of course, there are some disappointing omissions, including fan favorites consigned to the 360 era and cars lost to licensing issues, but the roster remains more vast and varied than any other Forza before or since, including everything from classic racers like the Aston Martin DB-R1, to hot hatchbacks like the mid-engine Renault Clio, to rally icons like the Lancia 037 Stradale, to modern track toys like the 2018 Porsche 911 GT2 RS. Just as impressive as this collection of cars is the list of locations where they drive. With over 30 different racing venues, Forza 7's track list, like its car list, is the most comprehensive of any entry in the series, spanning the gamut of global motorsport venues from Silverstone to Laguna Seca. Like the car roster, the list of locations does omit a few fan favorites, but with the addition of Dubai and the return of several tracks including Maple Valley, there has never been a motorsport entry with as much venue variety as Forza 7. Further adding to the diversity of circuit driving experiences is the enhanced weather system. Unlike the fixed system added in Forza 6, the weather conditions in Forza 7 are capable of changing during a race, in turn facilitating far more engaging driving scenarios. The very real possibility of a foggy day suddenly shifting to a downpour demands player vigilance to a degree impossible in prior games. Still, as compelling as these variable conditions may be, the mechanic itself represents a half step as opposed to a full leap forward. The option to adjust weather conditions is only available for certain tracks, and while it makes sense to forego rain for a destination like Dubai, the decision to do so with locations like Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, represents an obvious oversight. Even on tracks that do allow for weather adjustments, the system is far from spontaneous. Wet weather conditions may change unpredictably over the course of a race, but the intervals in which those changes occur are rigidly fixed, resulting in moments, especially during shorter races, where the seams on this supposedly spontaneous system are easy to see. Worse still, while the weather may change dramatically over the course of a race, different categories of weather conditions are themselves fully segregated from one another. Stormy clouds will never fully part to reveal a sunny sky, and no endurance race, no matter how long, will ever transition from day to night. The weather in Forza 7 is still undeniably an improvement over its predecessors, but it's far from the dynamic system promised by the game's advertising. More inconsistent and underwhelming than the climate of these environments is their visual presentation. While the lighting and texture work present in tracks is unwaveringly impressive, set dressing like trees and spectators are shockingly crude by comparison, consisting of little more than pixelated cardboard cutouts that pivot with perspective in a cheap attempt to maintain their three-dimensional facade. While this trick is often passably convincing during normal gameplay, it just as often fails to conceal the disparity in visual quality, and the stark contrast between a speedway and its spectators remains shocking at any speed. Considering that sister series Forza Horizon has managed to maintain polygonally complex crowds of people and entire forests of 3D foliage despite its graphically demanding open-world status, it's baffling to see such subpar details in a supposed visual showcase like Forza 7. To the relief of its petrolhead player base, the fidelity of Forza 7's vehicles stands in stark contrast to the tracks on which they drive. Boasting six-figure polygon counts, the technical quality of the car models is almost second to none, with meticulous modeling of fine details in rims and headlights rivaled only by Gran Turismo. The exceptional model work of the cars is further accentuated by the game's incredible lighting, with sunlight seemingly dancing across a Mustang's metal flake paint through sweeping turns. Despite this museum-quality model work, the cars in Forza 7 are far from untouchable tapestries. In fact, the franchise's iterative upgrade system facilitates fertile ground for player personalization. Besides the typical transmission swaps and tire compounds of earlier entries, novel inclusions like restrictor plates and Horizon carryovers like body kits expand customization possibilities beyond the limits of prior motorsport titles. While far from an overhaul, the improved upgrade system, in combination with quality of life improvements to the paint system, makes Forza 7 the most customizable motorsport since the series began. And that's before accounting for various adjustments to the racing experience. The addition of a new cockpit viewpoint positioned ahead of the steering wheel represents a subtle yet drastic improvement for the first-person driving experience, as the absence of steering wheel animations provides all players with a perspective that is both more practical and immersive. Simultaneously, the addition of camera sway options in first-person viewpoints are fantastic for visually conveying car momentum, while proximity arrows communicate the position of vehicles just outside the player's view. In tandem with the ability to alter the length of races, this suite of adjustable settings would allow players to have the most personalized career in the series, if not for the career itself. Frustratingly, the career mode in Forza 7 seems almost designed to undermine every improvement and expansion the game adds to the motorsport formula. Unlike earlier entries that balance progression and player agency across long campaigns, Forza 7's career is little more than a mishcambrolia of motorsport competitions. A linear progression divided across just 6 championships, each championship is a fixed and seemingly random selection of events, with little if any care given to how these selections affect the player's sense of progression. Whereas players in prior games would gradually move from sensible hatchbacks to high-end racing machines, Forza 7 puts players in the bizarre scenario of starting in high-performance supercars and then progressing to the 1963 Volkswagen Beetle. Compounding this scattershot composition of events is the progression requirements for the career. In order to move forward to the next championship, players are required to complete roughly half of the limited selection of events present in the current one, mitigating what little agency was allocated to the player and turning championships into begrudging obligations as players shift from picking events they prefer to weighing out which competitions will be the least unpleasant to complete. Compounded by one another, these factors result in a career that manages to be the worst of both worlds, a Forza experience that is simultaneously directionless and depressingly linear. As limited as the Drivers' Cup itself may be, the player's ability to adjust their experience within that career is more limited still. The freedom of the aforementioned upgrade system is completely undercut by incredibly restrictive homologation requirements, a collection of obligations so tethered to each event that they are directly imposed upon each car at the point of purchase. Not only does this make upgrading vehicles pragmatically pointless, but even if the player goes out of their way to manually upgrade each automobile, rigid restrictions to power outputs, tire compounds, and class placement severely limit the player's ability to adjust their car's performance, sometimes going so far as to make customization almost impossible. Even if a person can look past the underwhelming career and prohibitive upgrade restrictions, Forza 7 still manages to undermine the player experience, as not even the game's difficulty settings are spared from severe limitations. While the player can still manually adjust difficulty settings like vehicle damage and driving lines, these changes have no impact upon the credits received at the end of a race, with opponent difficulty as the only exception resulting in an increased payout. Besides removing any incentive to make races harder beyond a sense of pride and accomplishment, the resulting deficit from these difficulty settings fosters an incredibly grindy single-player experience, one exacerbated by the game's car collection system.
Car collecting isn't just a great way to have plenty of cars at your disposal. It's also a solid way to get better rewards.
Unlike earlier entries where the only restriction on a player's purchase was the credits in their account, Forza 7 deliberately holds its most desirable cars hostage behind a tiered ranking system, one where progression is entirely dependent upon the player's garage. In order to unlock a new tier, players must buy unowned cars from prior tiers, each of which possesses a respective collection score, until they have accumulated enough collection points to progress to the next tier, finally unlocking the cars within it for purchase. Like Sisyphus rolling a boulder up a hill, the player is put in the infuriating position of seeing their efforts deliberately squandered, raising enough credits for the car they actually want just to burn it all away and start from scratch. As an aggregate, the career in Forza 7 is aimless and artificially restrictive, exacerbated by a progression system that not only fails to improve the campaign, but forces players to experience more of it. It's a scenario that would be upsetting enough as a poor design decision, but like Forza 5 before it, something deeply cynical drives the flaws in Forza 7. Put succinctly, the grind isn't a bug, it's a feature, one evoked by the new inclusion of character cosmetics. For the first time in the franchise, players have the ability to alter the appearance of their avatar with unlockable racing suits. And while there is nothing inherently sinister about dressing up a digital doppelganger like a samurai, the devil is in the details. Unlike the cars, which can be directly purchased with credits, character cosmetics, along with modification cards that fix in-game progression by increasing event payouts, were originally relegated to random chance. More specifically, character cosmetics and mod packs were both held hostage by prize crates, or, to be more intellectually honest, loot boxes that could be purchased with real money. With this in mind, every obtuse decision and design choice comes into sharp focus. The atrophied difficulty settings, the haphazard career mode, the car collection gatekeeping, each seemingly pointless deviation from the Forza formula acts as a pressure point deliberately designed to coerce customers into paying more money for a game they already bought. Like so many other AAA games released in 2017, Forza Motorsport 7 was deliberately undermined by executives for the sole purpose of increasing profits. While the backlash from the player base prevented Microsoft from implementing these pay-to-win mechanics and ultimately forced them to remove loot boxes entirely, the damage was already done. No patch could fix problems so deeply baked into Forza 7. And to add insult to injury, the powers that be decided to replace real money random drops with a timed alternative, maintaining the same psychological pressure points of a Skinner box, seemingly out of spite. Despite all of this, there is a small but significant silver lining that makes the 7th Motorsport entry worth playing. In stark contrast to its career, Forza 7 has by far the best freeplay mode of any entry in the entire series. In the same way that artificially imposed restrictions compound the rudimentary campaign, the collection of cars and tracks increases racing possibilities exponentially, facilitating a fantastic platform for custom events before even acknowledging the adjustments built atop that foundation. Unlike earlier entries where event customization was essentially limited to car class and lap count, Forza 7's freeplay gives players a massive degree of autonomy. Players can dictate weight, power, and year restrictions to create their own car divisions, specify start conditions and pit stop requirements, and can even control the probability of changing weather conditions throughout a race. Coming just shy of the Forza Horizon series allowing players to handpick specific cars for the starting grid, the Freeplay Mode in Forza 7 offers the player more freedom than any mode in any prior motorsport game. Granted, it doesn't solve the game's most glaring issues. Race payouts remain proportionate to the low revenue of the career, opponent difficulty is still the only way of boosting earnings, and the gatekeeping of cars behind collection tiers remains a perpetual thorn in the player's side. Regardless, the Freeplay Mode of Forza 7 offers an oasis where participants can build a career that's genuinely worth playing, and with it, a window into the good game the developers wanted to make, trapped in the bad product they were forced to sell. Overall, playing Forza Motorsport 7 is a bittersweet experience, not just compared to its ancestors, but also compared to its sequel, a game that when I started writing was only about a week away from launch day. As Microsoft's third attempt at a motorsport premiere on high-end hardware, the soft reboot of the series represents a mixed blessing. It's reassuring to see just how strongly the developers are hammering home the motorsport aspect of Forza Motorsport, but that excitement is undercut by a few glaring red flags. And while the specifics of this scenario are different from those that came before, it's frustrating to see this franchise repeating the same kinds of mistakes. Fantastic as the physics and the multiplayer may be, it's hard to appreciate these improvements as so much is left behind, and what's left is held hostage. Forza Motorsport 7 is a good bad game, and while the nuanced reappraisal represented by that statement may be vindicating in a vacuum, in the context of its successor, it's extremely depressing. To speak with a sharper edge, Forza Motorsport 7 is a mediocre and underwhelming entry, and for many, it may well be as good as it gets for a long time to come. Thank you guys so much for watching, and sorry for ending on such a bummer. I promise next year I'll start working on some more positive projects. If you enjoyed this retrospective review, feel free to drop a like, and if you want to see more content similar to this, be sure to subscribe to the classiest cavern on the World Wide Web. See you next time. Bye-bye.